So Doom, Ultra, RX 480 and above 120 FPS. These words, they all go together really nicely. The thing is though, when you're blasting through another horde, you don't really have time to take in the small variations offered up by that Ultra preset compared with high. And if like me, you're still using a 60Hz monitor, those extra FPS, they're just not being put to good use. This XFX RX 480 GTR Black Edition, that mouthful again, is one of those Polaris 10 cars which features the more hand-picked silicone, much like the refined cores in the new RX 580. Those used in the top-end cars by the AIB partners usually feature the cream of the binning crop. Now this, coupled with a beefier cooling solution and better voltage regulation, generally means that you can achieve higher clock speeds than the standard versions of the same GPU. And this holds true for my Black Edition, being able to easily overclock well past 1400 MHz. But is there any point in overclocking a card that already maxes out a game you want to play? Well, no, not really. So for a change, let's go the other way. Better silicon means that inherently the GPU is going to be more efficient at a given clock speed. More efficiency also means it's got to run cooler for that given clock speed. And running cooler also means it's going to use less power. So this got me thinking, how low can we go and maintain that solid 60 FPS in Doom and still run on the high preset? Now a lot has been made about one of the other cars that I own, the GTX 1050 Ti, and its rating is 75 watts. So can we half that? So let's get into the testing. At my day-to-day settings of 1.4 GHz on the GPU and 2.1 GHz on the VRAM, we see the following results. A frame rate average of 140 FPS through one of the arcade runs, a GPU temperature averaging out about 78 degrees C, and a GPU power draw of 115 watts. So this gives us a good baseline, but for the sake of completeness, I've reset the clock speeds to stock, which means for this XFX card, a base clock of 1338 and a 2 GHz clock on the VRAM. We do lose a few FPS here, averaging out at 133, and we also lose a degree of heat at 77 on average. The GPU power draw is down 10 watts though, to 105. So not a huge amount of variation in power usage through this arcade run, comparing my custom overclock with the stock speeds that it comes at. So let's downclock a little on the core and the VRAM and see how that helps. We're downclocking the GPU to 1100 MHz and the VRAM we've knocked 100 MHz off of that and it's sitting at 1.9 GHz. As expected, the FPS does take a little bit of tumble, still averaging 115 FPS, and the temperatures, they drop down nicely too, 68 degrees C through the whole run. GPU power draw, decreased dramatically, and at these clock speeds we're sitting at 70 watts. But it would be a bit of a shame to stop there, so using MSI Afterburner we've turned the sliders all the way down. This means a GPU clock speed of 665 MHz and a VRAM clock speed of just 1 GHz. So was it playable? Absolutely. The average frame rate was 70 FPS and the minimums never dropped below 60. Likewise, the GPU temperature took an absolute tumble here as well, dropping down to 57. While the GPU power draw seen a huge tumble of 28 watts down to 42. So with the clock speeds turned all the way down, the only thing that was left in my mind for us to try was turning on VSync. We know that we've got a little bit of headroom there. The average FPS on that minimum stable underclock was 70 FPS, so locking that at 60 should save us just a little bit more power. And going through this run, that was absolutely the case. The average frame rate was a rock solid 60 FPS. The GPU temperature dropped down to 50 degrees C, and the GPU power draw was only 36 watts. Now it should be noted for the temperatures here that the fans, they're not blazing. I'm not sitting with the fans on at 100%, this is still using my custom fan curve. And at 50 degrees C, it's pretty much inaudible. The final test that I've got here now is to record the gameplay footage while at these lower clock speeds. So here is the raw footage for that. As you can see, we're almost hitting a stable 60 FPS, this is with VSync on of course, but while recording we do see drops into the high 50s, and power consumption is a little bit higher as well. But overall, there we've got it, a very impressive Doom 60 FPS on high settings on an RX 480, using less than half of the available power you could get from a PCIe slot, and with fan speeds that are quite frankly inaudible. So as a technical exercise, it's a purely technical exercise, this has been really interesting to me to highlight just how efficient the Polaris architecture can be. Quite often our pursuit of higher FPS sees us push our cards so hard that the temperatures increase at an exponential rate, And while the little number in the corner of the screen goes up, and that does feel good, the benefits for the majority of gamers on a 60Hz display, it simply isn't there. It is going to be nigh on impossible for somebody running the game at maximum overclock and getting 135 FPS to tell the difference during gameplay with when we underclocked it ever so slightly and still maintained 115 FPS. So if your gaming rig sounds like an Apache helicopter on takeoff and you're not rocking a high refresh rate display, maybe try optimising your gaming experience for your actual hardware instead of bragging rights. Who knows, you might like it. Now I will add that running a game at 60 FPS might not be for everyone. There's definite benefits to running games at higher frame rates, but that's perhaps a video for another time. But give it a try. For you, the difference might be imperceivable. Anyway folks, I hope you've enjoyed this kind of random video. Let's face it, it's basically been an excuse for me to tinker with the 480 and play some Doom. But as always folks, thanks so much for taking time to watch this, take care, and I'll see you all down below in the comment section and in the next video.